Thank you for joining us this morning for this week's live Q&A. I'm looking in the windows of this flow hive and I can see there's a lot of honey here to harvest. And we're just around the corner from USA spring, or Northern Hemisphere spring should I say. So all of those up in the north will be getting ready for the beekeeping season ahead. And that means being prepared with your gear, making sure you've got your hive equipment, so when your bees are ready, you've got the box all assembled with your favourite coat on the outside ready for your bees. It's always good to be prepared and get your equipment early. Now here we are in our autumn, which is the opposite of course to the Northern Hemisphere, and we're seeing a good honey flow, which is fantastic. Here, you never quite know what's going to happen in autumn, but this year we've had a lot of rain, it's set off the flowers, and we do have a good honey flow coming in. You can see here in this window, you've got a lot of capping that the bees have just put on. Down in the lower area, you can see they're still closing them in. Really beautiful view there. Chime in, let us know where you are in the world and what's happening in your beekeeping season. Whether the snow's still melting, or whether you're harvesting honey, or whether the flowers are blooming. And if you don't have a hive yet, then chime in and ask about the beekeeping season in your area, because people on the thread will jump in and really let you know, and it's part of the learning journey of learning about bees, is knowing what's flowering when and how that affects your honey. Now, we're going to harvest some honey. We're also going to use our super lifter invention, which is in this bag here. If you haven't seen that, stay tuned. And we could just about pick any frame here because we can see the bees are on a flow and they are really putting that honey away. Looking in this rear window, even though it's not quite full yet, and we can see in the side windows it's not quite full, but it's so close that I can tell from the side window and this rear window here that there is honey to harvest, and that it's so close to being ready, it's close enough. So all we're going to do, while you think of your questions, if you've got questions, put it in the comments and we'll get to answering those, is pick a frame. Let's pick this one here, and what we'll do is we'll put our little tube in, and I can see the wax capping on the sides looking down between the frames, which is a beautiful and useful view. You can even watch the bees filling the cells with their tongues. I'm turning this handle like that, do it in segments to make it easier, or you might find, like today, it's quite easy to turn the whole frame. Really just depends. There's the honey coming down the tube already. It's a nice warm hot day. It's moving quickly now, and we should see that jar filling up. I'm going to taste it because I love honey. Oh yum, I wasn't expecting that flavour. So it's a more sort of rounded honey flavour, I'd say today. It's got less of those spring floral bursts. Something else has been flowering while the bees have been filling that frame. That's become one of the amazing joys of harvesting honey in this way, is all the different flavours you get from a single hive in your season. As the bees visit different flowers, they're able to then store different honeys in each frame. Look at that honey just absolutely pouring out. If it's cold weather, it'll go slower. If it's really warm, it'll go a bit quicker, but you're not doing any work while the honey's harvesting itself, so it doesn't really matter if it's slow or quick. You can go and do other things while the honey is flowing out, which is what we're going to do. We're going to get our super lifter and open a hive, do a brood inspection, have a look at what's going on in the brood box down below. We won't do it on this hive because we're harvesting honey right now, but there's plenty of hives here to have a look at, to give you a bit of a show and tell. If you've got questions, put it in the comments and we'll get to answering those. Trace, are there any questions coming in at all?
Yes, Seeds. I'm loving the honey coming out of the hive, and a couple of people saying, how much does that jar actually hold?
So this jar holds about 2 litres, which it's actually just over 2 litres, which equals 3 kilograms of honey, because honey is heavier than water. and that's about right for a full frame. Occasionally we will overflow a jar, but most of the time it's about spot on.
Fantastic. So now I've got someone in the US, and I've just received their Flow Hive 2 Plus, which is the Western Red Cedar, which is the one we're harvesting from. And question is, what should I coat it with? What should I paint or stain or whatever on the outside of it?
Okay, good question. So this has been out for about 2 years now, and the reason why we suggest the decking products is because decking products are made for wood to look good outdoors. So if you're wanting to keep that natural fresh wood look, you're always fighting nature a little bit. It wants to turn it grey, but if you put a coat on like this, which is a deck coat, it can last quite a long time. So they're the ones to go for at your hardware store. Now our other wood types, we recommend a good outdoor house coat on. It's really the Western Red Cedar that has the properties that allows the wood to stay looking like this for a long time. Now this has been there a while, and you can see how that deck coat has preserved it. It's not perfect, but it lasts a lot longer than other wood types when you put that decking coat on. Okay, keep those questions rolling in. Also let us know what's happening in your beekeeping season.
So,
Yum, look at that honey.
If you're having a few problems and your bees aren't maybe going up into the flow frames, into the super box, got some good tips on how to encourage those bees to start working those flow frames?
Okay, so sometimes you can get a bit impatient. Now, the best recipe is you got a lot of bees when you open the side window, and that's coinciding with a lot of nectar producing flowers. So they're flowering, there's a lot of nectar for the bees, and then the bees will build up. They'll then need the extra space to store honey, so they'll start waxing up all the flow frame parts, covering every cell with wax, joining the parts together, and the whole process starts. Now if you're getting a bit impatient and you want to get a jump on it, then what you can do is use some beeswax. So the easiest way to do that, in my opinion, is to scrape some off the top of the brood frames. If the hive is ready for a super, the bees will have started putting a bit of burr comb or kind of spare comb right on top of the brood frames here. And you can scrape some off using your J-Hive tool like this, and we might even get to show you that. What we'll do is we'll open the hive with a super lifter and show you how to just scrape some burr comb off the top of the frames, and then with your flow frame, which if it's fresh will look like that, and it's really only the first time. Once it's covered in wax, it's just like any other frame as far as the bees are concerned, and you'll be getting that burr comb and just mashing it into the flow frame surface. You won't damage the flow frames. Easy trick to do. Put it on the window side and enjoy watching them recycle that wax and use it to coat the flow frame parts and start joining all the little pieces together. Now you still won't get any stored honey until the bees are ready, and when they're ready is they've got a big population and they need the extra storage, and there's a lot of flowers really flowering, producing that nectar. So patience is probably the biggest recipe. We never put any wax coating on, we just let the bees do it in their own time. However, people who have a short season get concerned that they might miss it if they don't really help out a little bit with the bees and the flow frames. So another thing you can do if you want to is melt up some beeswax and just paint it with a paintbrush onto these surfaces. Do not pour the wax in, you'll jam the mechanism. That'll do the same job as putting in a bit of burr comb like that. And that may get the bees going just a little bit quicker on your flow frames. Let us know how you go.
So he's just talking about that wax. We've got a few people sort of asking, you know, how do you harvest that beeswax to collect it if you wanted to make candles and things like that?
Okay, if you want to make candles, then what you'll be doing is saving wax whenever you see it. Now, any beehive you can get beeswax from. The bees excrete it, the worker bees excrete it, and they use it to build their comb. And down here in the brood box, you'll find often it is wax. honeycomb on the edge. As you go in closer, it'll be the brood frames, which are also made of wax and a mixture of a little bit of propolis and so on. But if you've just got honey frame on the edge here, you can feel free to take some of that honey comb by just cutting it out, and once you've either crushed and strained or chewed on the honeycomb and saved the wax, then you can save that up for doing craft and ends. There's one little bee. What's it doing? Out of the jar, please. That's it. Okay. Now, another spot you can collect honeycomb is under the roof. So you can pull out the little inner cover plug and allow the bees up into the roof cavity. Now, if you do that, they're likely to fill the whole roof full of free-form honeycomb, which is exciting at first, but a bit of a mess to clean up later. So you might want to use a glass baking dish over the top, and you can enjoy watching them build the honeycomb in a confined area. That way you can get the roof on and off while their bees are building their comb, and you'll get to watch that. So that's a neat little trick. Or Trace reading out the questions. She likes to put the ideal box on top of the Flow Hive Super here. So it's another little box with little short frames specific for honeycomb collection. Or some people use it for a honey barrier between the brood box and the super. If you're going for honeycomb, you'll be putting that on top of the super, and then the roof, or inner cover, then roof on top of that.
Seeds, Ali's wondering, is in Colorado, and wondering, do you have to inspect the flow frames in the same way that you would the brood frames?
No, you don't. We've made a system so that you can get a fairly good idea from the outside when it's time to harvest. However, if you are curious and you want to match up what's going on in your season by looking in these windows with what's actually going on inside on the flow frames, then by all means pull out a frame or two and have a look and go, yeah, that's what I thought was happening. Oh, I didn't realise that the frames were quite full, even though I'm not seeing it there. And that can be a useful thing to do from time to time, but for the most part, you can look in these windows and get a pretty good idea of when it's time to harvest or not, especially if you watch it over time. So here you can see in the side window that the bees are looking for places to store more honey. They're actually even starting to build a tiny little second layer on top in this little region. So that tells me that they're running out of room, running out of cells to put their honey, showing that it's likely that all of these frames are full on the inside. You can also look down the cell lines. If you look down here, you can see the capping. Now we've got a funny mixture here because the seasons chops and changes here a little bit in the autumn, and you can see that these cells were full and they actually uncapped and took the honey out. Whereas this one here, they're on a filling pattern. So it's a little bit of a mixture of the bees got hungry and took some honey out, and now they're on a flow and they're filling it up again. So this window tells you an interesting story of what's been happening with the flowers and the bees.
And the birds and the bees. Hey Seeds, if you get a hive, I guess you've already got bees in your yard, hopefully anyway, but if you get a flow hive and you put it in your yard, are you going to end up with heaps more bees, and does that become a problem?
Well, it becomes a benefit to your garden and to your produce. So if you're growing things like pumpkins, zucchinis, you name it, then pollination becomes a really important thing. And there are native bee species which will do pollination for you, but often some of our species really do rely on Apis mellifera, the European honeybee, the one that you'll keep in your flow hive. And when the bees disappeared, which happened to some parts of Australia when Varroa first came into the mid-north coast here, my father-in-law, who lives there, noticed that the bees disappeared altogether. And that meant he was hand pollinating his pumpkins. So that just goes to show the importance of the European honeybee and having enough beekeepers to keep the food system and the whole agricultural system that supports us going. So yes, you'll get more bees in your yard, and that's generally viewed as a good thing. Now, will you get lots more? will depend a little bit on what you've got around already. Now, if you're concerned about having too many bees, the time of year when that can happen is when it's springtime and there's not enough space in the hive. The bees are going crazy, foraging, collecting a lot of honey, and they're really crowded in here. Open the window, you can't see the comb, there's too many bees. That's the time to do something about it and give them more space, either add another box or take a split and start another hive before they split themselves. Or what you can get is a swarm where half the bees push the queen out and they go off to find a new place to set up shop. Now that's when you can see a lot of bees all of a sudden, and it's a spectacular thing in my opinion. And they usually temporarily land somewhere nearby, and that's when you can take advantage of shaking them into a box and get that exciting moment of a swarm catch. But ideally you get ahead of the curve and you limit that from happening. So if you're in tight quarters in suburbia, you don't end up with a swarm on your neighbour's washing line. Often people are quite understanding, or they even like this spectacle, but other times it's a bit too scary for them. So we try and limit that swarming behaviour in the springtime by taking our splits and making more space in the hive, harvesting the honey to make room, and so on.
Yeah, Karen's tuning in. I'm not sure where from, but she's saying her very exciting moment was she's just got some honey from her super, and she's so excited. I remember when I first did mine, and it was like the most exciting thing.
It really is. Send us some pictures. It's just such a beautiful thing to taste the honey from your surrounding area as well. It's the best honey is always the honey that comes into your backyard.
It's great. And now Kentucky, this is a good one. He's tuning in from Brussels in Belgium with a bit of a sore throat, so sorry about that. But he's just wanting to check in that he first saw this launch. He thinks it was the Father and Son project, and asking how long ago was that when you guys first launched the Flow Hive?
So that was in 2015. So we've just had our birthday a couple of weeks ago. Well, the Flow Hive's birthday in terms of the launch. And each year we harvest some honey onto a cake, and it's really neat to give a shout out to all of the people that were there in the beginning, watching that, sharing that, and to our backers of our crowdfunding campaign, which was an extraordinary campaign where we had, we broke the internet basically several times. We crashed the crowdfunding platform Indiegogo several times. We hit an all-time record of the fastest to $1 million US, and then it just kept going, and we ended up at 12.2 million US after our first child was born. It was quite a hectic launch, and that was how we started. So it was a rocket ship start, as you say, with my father Stuart and I, and it really gave us an amazing start in the world to get our Flow Hive out to 130 different countries, and it's been an amazing ride since. We're still here answering questions each week, and Trace, who's reading out the questions, she's still here answering the phones and helping out all of our customers around the world as well. And we've got a team here dedicated to help you get started in beekeeping if you're new to beekeeping, or to help you if you're having any issues with your hives. So shout out, we also have a new book we've launched called Flow Hive's Book of Bees and Beekeeping, which is for those that like to read. It's got really useful beekeeping and inspiring beekeeping stories, and also our founding startup story we were just talking about in there, with probably a little bit oversharing on a couple of bits, but it's a good read.
Yeah, go and get it, it's really good. Send in your questions.
But we also have a dedicated online course as well. So we're focused on education from the very beginning, recognising that we get about half of people coming to buy our Flow Hives are brand new to beekeeping. So we have put a dedicated education course out there at the beekeeper.org, which is made to take you from square one right through to a deep knowledge in beekeeping. Experts from all around the world contributed to that, and it's also an amazing fundraiser for the bees, and it's free to try. So have a look at that if you really like high quality video learning in a nice sequential order. Otherwise, we're here each week answering questions as well.
Oh, here's another sort of more personal one for you too, Seeds. It's from someone called Beer Hands, and I mean beer as in B-E-A-R, not the drink. Just because of my accent, I sound like I'm saying beer. He's wondering, mate, are you still flying?
Yes, I am still flying. I actually just had a nice flight the other day. Took off from a local hill with my paraglider, and it's not that often I actually get a chance to get out between having 2 children and 40 staff here at Flow Hive and so on. So it's really nice when I do get to get out and fly, and I was able to just go gliding, no motor, and fly 80 kilometres inland, and it was spectacular over the mountains. So it was a really nice day, but few and far between, I have to say.
See, the JJ's asking, how do you clean it? And I'm not sure whether it's the flow frames or the hive or...
Okay, so generally, if the flow frames stay on the hive like this, then the bees will look after them. Now, caveat on that is, after about 5 years or more has gone past, then it could be a good idea to clean off a lot of the wax, because you see here the bees are coating every cell in wax, and that can really build up and after a while start to limit the function of the frame. So to clean that off, taking the frames out after you've harvested, of course, and using a pressure washer we've found is the best way. So you lay it down on a flat paved area or up against a wall. Make sure it's supported. You don't want to blow the frame apart. So it does need support either down that way or leaning up. And you're just going down the lines. Set it to open position like this and go down the cell lines with that pressure washer, and pay special attention to this viewing face so you can really knock off a bunch of wax and get a decent view back again. So that's what we find people are doing. We've got people now 11 years in with their frames still going well. Please don't throw them away when they get old and waxy. Just clean them up, let them dry in the shade, get them back on a hive again. We want them to last as long as possible.
Now listen, Simone's in Melbourne and has a couple of questions. One is regarding should they remove the super, the Flow Hive super over winter. They do get a few frosts but no snow. And Simone was told that 5 full honey frames will get the bees through winter. They also have an ideal full of honey sitting on top of it at the moment in preparation for winter. So Simone's first question is, should they remove the queen excluder and then just set the ideal on top of the brood and let the bees do their thing? Because she reckoned that last year they removed the flow frame super from the hive, but spring snuck up really quickly, and looking back she probably didn't need to remove the flow frames.
Oh, that's a good question for your local beekeepers about how small you should make your hive for winter. Ask multiple beekeepers, you'll get multiple answers, and in the end you'll make up your own mind, and it sounds like you've really got some experience behind you with what happens in your area already. So there's a few parts to your question. One is, should you move the queen excluder if you've got a really cold winter where you've got several months of perhaps snow and so on? And the answer is yes. The reason why is if you've got the cluster of bees down here and they polish off all the honey stores on the edge, they're going to want to move up the hive to get some honey in one of the upper boxes. Now, if you've got your queen excluder in the way, the queen can't travel with the cluster and she'll perish below. And that way you'll start the spring without a queen. So that's the minimum, is just removing that queen excluder and putting your hive back together. However, people often like to right size their hive for their colony during the winter, which means often if they've got more than one honey super, usually taking a box or two off and bring it back to a configuration kind of like this, where you've got your brood box and some honey stores on top for the bees to survive on during that cold winter, with the queen excluder removed. Now, how much you need is a good question for your local beekeepers, but if you asked Fred Dunn up in Pennsylvania, a very cold area, he would say that you need your brood box here, and just an ideal full of honey on top would be adequate. And he just said all of his flow hives just came through the winter just fine. So that would be a good one. It's on the beekeeper.org, or you might find it on Fred Dunn's channel too, a wintering video about how you should set up your hive to get through a long, cold, snowy winter. Whether or not you leave the flow frames on is a little bit up to you, and it depends on the size of your colony as well. You don't want to give them too much space to keep warm, or that will limit their ability to stay warm during that cold winter. They don't need to keep it as warm as they normally do, because the queen stops laying and they no longer need to keep it warm for the open brood, but they do like to just keep a survival amount of warmth going. So having extra boxes that they're not using will make that harder for them. So generally people are taking boxes off, reducing it to a brood box and an ideal, or a brood box and a super full of honey. Some people leave the flow frames on, a lot of people take them off. Let us know how you go.
Oh, great. And just another part to Simone's question is also that the Varroa mite is closely approaching Melbourne, and in some areas they already have it. Just wondering, apart from regular hive checks, is there anything else you'd suggest that they should be doing?
Okay, I missed that. She's in Melbourne.
Yeah, so she, yeah, sorry, yep. Yeah, so Simone's in Melbourne. So Varroa's on its way there, if not it's already there.
Yes,
apart from regular checks,
so
any other tips?
In Melbourne, my sister keeps the bees, and she'll usually keep them in this configuration all through winter, and she does okay there down on the peninsula. So different parts, depending on where you are, will get colder as well. The ocean will have an effect of moderating that. Now, Varroa is just coming in, as you say, to that Melbourne area. So what you'll need to be doing is monitoring and looking out for it, which sounds like you already are. And our big lesson from Varroa, which the build-up phase has just smashed through here in this past year, and now we're out the other side already, things are looking more stable, mite counts are staying lower for a lot longer. We're not getting those mite bombs anymore, but the big learning was manage the hive beetles. So if you've got hive beetles in your area, make sure you're keeping them at low numbers by trapping them down in the pest management tray or any other hive beetle traps you want to use, because that's the thing that took out a lot of hives in this area, was the hive beetles. The Varroa weakened hives, hives died out in unmanaged colonies. Our bees went and got the Varroa from when they're robbing the remaining honey resources. The hives slimed out from the hive beetles, and we got 10,000 more hive beetles from every hive that died out. We had this massive hive beetle explosion, which was overwhelming hives, whether or not the Varroa count was low or not. So that was the big learning for us here. It'll be a little bit easier, less hive beetles in your area, and that's just in a humid climate, you just get a lot more hive beetles. So that's a good lesson for those to the north of us, up at Brisbane, sunny coast, to make sure you're managing those hive beetles. That's almost, in my opinion, becomes a more urgent thing, because the Varroa, we get quite a long runway in Australia where we're seeing hives that have a count of 100 in a wash still look fine. That's quite different to overseas, and it's simply because we don't have the viruses that didn't come with Varroa. In other places, you've got Varroa bringing other viruses into the hive as well. So not having those, we can take the Varroa count a lot higher. So we've got a longer runway there, but the hive beetles can overwhelm a hive very quickly. So manage those, yes, manage Varroa, but stay onto the hive beetles.
Great. I think, Seeds Pete, people who are watching sometimes think, well, Seed, you're standing in front of the hive, you haven't really got much protection, you're harvesting honey, and they either think there's no bees or whatever's going on, and so wondering, you know, where are the bees coming in and out, and why aren't you getting stung?
So here's their entrance. Now, it's a good idea when you're on this side to put your veil on. An aggressive hive might decide to sting me on the face just now. I'm comfortable with this hive. I'm an experienced beekeeper. I'm going to leave my veil off. But being if you're a beginner, then protect yourself, give yourself a nice start in beekeeping. Stings on the face aren't fun, and they often swell more than those on other parts of the body as well. So putting your veil on is a sensible idea, because that will really limit stings. Now, gloves are great as well. As a new beekeeper, wear your gloves. You're learning a lot. You don't want to be learning about stings at the same time as learning a lot about how the bees behave. So as you gain experience, then you can make that call to experiment with taking gloves off. But I always recommend, when you're doing your actual beekeeping, when you're looking at the brood box down below here, to use a good suit and protect your face. Now, there's nothing to prove. You don't need to be some kind of hero going without a bee suit. In fact, you'll just end up with a lot of stings and a swollen face doing that. So make sure you're well protected when you're doing your brood inspections, and in the beginning, even when you're around the hive, particularly around the entrance side, protect yourself from stings. And you'll learn about how your colony behaves as well, and whether they have those more territorial aggressive traits or not.
So if you've got your flow hive and you want your bees, how do you get the bees, or will the bees just see the beautiful house and fly on in?
So generally how people start is they get some bees off another beekeeper. You can take a split, which is taking some frames out of another hive, or a beekeeper might have taken a split for you, which is called a nucleus hive, and you put that where you want to start your hive, and on a warm sunny day you get into your bee suit, you get out your smoker and you transfer them into the brood box and look after them, and they'll grow from there. So nucleus is the most usual and easy way to go. You can also order a package which is just the bees, like an artificial swarm, and they can start from that as well, as long as there's a queen shipped and she survives in transit. She's usually in a little queen cage with your package of bees, which is just a whole lot of bees in a box. You can catch a swarm, but what you're talking about is a bait hive, where you set up your hive and the bees just move in. Now, that's an unlikely way to start, but every springtime we set up bait hives because occasionally it works and we catch a swarm. So the recipe is set up a brood box 6 to 12 feet off the ground with the base, with a roof, put your brood frames in it. You might like to put a little bit of lemongrass oil in there as well, in a Ziploc bag with some pinholes, or there's a product called Swarm Commander that mimics a pheromone of the bees. You're more likely to get a swarm checking that out and deciding it's a good home to move into. But that really only works in the springtime, when you've got a lot of swarms coming from an area that has a lot of bees. So if next door you've got a lot of beehives, then a bait hive is a reasonable chance in spring as a way to start your hive. But otherwise, just order some bees or take a split from a friend.
Right. So Sarah's wondering, if you wanted to use the super box as a brood box because you want to look through the windows, could you do that? So could you put your brood frames in the super box so you can check out the side windows?
Or there would be a few little things to modify to do that. So if you've got a spare super box around and you want to make yourself a brood box out of it, obviously you'd be screwing this cover that we're using as a jar shelf on, so that covers up that area. And up here, the rebate, or in this case the frame rest, is lower because the flow frames need this access area to be taller than the typical brood frame. So you'll need to patch up that as well. And that could be as simple as just a couple of sticks of wood across there. And then you could make yourself, as you say, an observation brood box out of an old super. Let us know how you go.
Oh, fantastic. Now, a couple of people asking about where do you purchase and which countries do we ship to. Honeyflow.com is a good website to start with, and also there's an awesome customer support team. You can email them, give us a call, you'll probably get me, chat to somebody, and we can help you work out if your country's not on that shipping map. Give us a call. We've got a crew that love trying to figure out how to get hives all around the world. And yeah, so just honeyflow.com is the website there. So I think you're about to do the super lifter, aren't you?
Yeah, let's light a smoker, and we did promise we'd be doing some super lifting. I'll try and fast track this smoker lighting here with this little blowtorch. And all we're doing now is using some garden mulch. In this case it's the organic sugarcane mulch, but you can use whatever you like. The trick to lighting a smoker is not only should your fuel be dry, but just put a little bit in at a time. Get some flames going. As soon as I stuff a whole lot in there, it will go out, especially if what you're using tends to pack down. So that's going nicely there, and you can see flames, which is good. And it's tempting just to jam a whole lot more in, but if I do that, it'll go out. So you just tinkle a little bit in and then keep going. And you can use that opportunity just to smoke your hands as well, and ideally not the flames though. And that's if you are going gloveless. That just helps mask your own mammal pheromone. After all, the bees are used to protecting their hive from bears, so you don't want to smell like a bear. You don't want to look like a bear either. You don't want to wear a shiny black nose, or they would want to sting it. In fact, some hives will really go for shiny black. If you're wearing black, that could aggravate the bees a bit. So now it's going, and we've got lots of good cool smoke. We're going to wander along here, choose a hive. Let's choose this one here, and we'll go for a brood inspection. So at this point I should put my veil on, and I'm going to leave this right at the entrance, so any returning foragers just get that whiff of smoke, and it will really enhance the calming effect of the smoke, which is what we want. We want nice calm bees when we get into this hive. Remembering to do our zips up, closing this Velcro over the top, and we'll grab our super lifter, which is in this bag here. We've got a few trinkets in the caddy here for a show and tell. We also wanted to show you how to wax up the frames using a bit of burr comb, so let's see if we can find some in there for that example.
And just see, what is it? What have you put in the smoker?
In the smoker we put the organic sugarcane mulch. You can use dry leaves, you can use cardboard if you like, but avoid using stuff with a lot of heavy print. You don't want those chemicals going into your hive. You want a nice, ideally thick, cool smoke, free from any news print. Now, to keep that going, it's only just started, so we may as well put a little bit more fuel in there, and that way we will keep it going while we do our brood inspection. So after it's been going a little while, put more in, use your gloves, don't burn yourself, and remember to puff it every now and then to keep that smoker going. So that just goes right in the entrance. It's hardly going at the moment, but it'll pick up again now because we've got a nice layer of embers at the bottom. I'll leave that there. Now let's just show you how to open the hive with the super lifter. So to do that, all we do is open the bag, and you'll notice we've got some handles here. Now we put them one in each hand facing this way. We've made it so it sets itself up automatically, and it is now in that position. You're rolling your wrists in. Step number 1 is written on the brackets, that's lifting the handle. Step number 2 is written on the lower brackets, and that is onto the lower load point screws there. Handles go up like that. Now note, when you do step 4 here, which is lifting this up, you'll see that it's already opening the hive for you. Now that used to be a lot of work, and if, like this hive, the frames stick to the excluder, which they sometimes do, then that's a real pain when you're trying to muscle that box off without the super lifter. In this case, we can simply use our J-Hive tool to pop them back down. Now, anyone who's wrestled boxes off where the frames have gotten stuck to the excluder like this will breathe a sigh of relief when they see how easy this is to push those frames back down without trying to support the box at the same time. Now the bees always get annoyed when the frames come up as well, so we're going to give them a little moment to calm down, make sure we get our smoker going before we show you the lift. More often than not that doesn't happen, and you're just on to the next step, which is open the hive like a box, which is completely different to how it's been for the last 150 years or so. So it's a new invention. My father and I spent actually 7 years developing. We came up with many different approaches, and in the end we wanted something that would be very fast and very easy and gentle for the bees, and we finally got there. Launched it last year. It's getting amazing rave reviews from people who, very touching and almost teary reviews from people that are now using this super lifter. So it's the first bit of work is it's done all of that chiseling and getting that box off the other box, which the bees really glue together with their propolis. And now you can see all those frames have dropped, and what we can do is the next step, which is just opening the hive like that. Now in this case, which is unusual, the box is a bit sticky, so but you've got this beautiful gap here already without having to chisel your way in, just to lift that up. We've got a lot of honey in there, and you should be able to open that now just by rolling it over, and that makes it a lot easier than lifting a full 10 frame laying full of honey, potentially the lid as well. And there you have it, you're in the hive without all of that wrestling and chiseling that you once had to do, without that back-breaking work. Let us know what you think of the super lifter. We're in the hive now, and I'm looking at these frames going, there is a lot of bees, which is fantastic. They're looking really healthy, which is great. We're over the hump with the build-up phase in our area with Varroa. Things are looking good. They're bringing in a lot of honey. It's great news for us here. Now, there is some wax built up on the frames. There's not a lot there, but I did say I would show you how to scrape some off and put it into the surface of the flow frames if you do want to muck around with putting some wax in on the surface of the flow frames. So that's with the idea to answer that question earlier, is there a way we can speed them up in terms of really getting in there and working the flow frames quicker. So first of all, you're smoking the bees out of the way to expose that wax, and then you're simply scraping some off like this. So you're using your chisel tool, you're getting a whole bunch of wax like that, and you can get quite a lot if you want to. In this case, we'll just get that much, and it doesn't matter if it comes with honey, but you're not after the honey, it's the wax that makes the difference. So you've got your flow frame here, and if you just mash it into the flow frame surface like that, you won't damage the flow frames, but the bees will quickly realize that that looks a bit out of place, and what they will want to do is chew that away, and they quite quickly use it to connect all the flow frame parts together and start coating the cell parts in wax, and you still won't get any honey stores until the bees actually are on a good flow and there's a lot of bees and they need the space. So some patience is still needed. But in that area, you can watch through the window and enjoy watching them recycle that wax and make a start here on the flow frames.
And so it's a question coming in about the flow frames. Do you think it, what's the word, like changes the taste of the honey because you're using plastics in the flow super?
Okay, so that's a common question, and plastic's not new to beekeeping, but what we've done is gone and made parts that move and give you that really useful function, bypassing the whole need for a whole lot of processing equipment. And the end result is the bees actually cover the cells in wax. So all of these plastic parts are covered in wax. We've used the most food grade plastics we can find. The bees then cover them in wax, so each cell, if you like, is a little wax pocket with your honey inside it. Then when you harvest, like we were just doing down there, the part every second cell moves, forming channels for the honey to flow down and out. And in my opinion, that's the least amount of disturbance to your honey. So flow hive honey is often winning shows. They haven't told them it's a flow hive, but it just comes out so clear and so fresh and so full of those floral notes. And there's been university studies to prove that honey harvested with the flow hive actually has higher floral notes than harvested in the conventional ways. So I think it's quite the opposite. We're using something that, yes, it's a synthetic substrate, but it gives you this really useful function where the honey can flow out without touching any other machinery. Now normally you're mixing a whole lot of honeys together, it's going through your hot knife, decapping, then the centrifugal extractor, the honey's spinning through the air, it's hitting your stainless steel, then it's going into plastic buckets and sieves and so on. And every step of the way you're losing flavour. So flow hives will help you not only isolate flavours but retain flavour you'd otherwise lose harvesting in conventional ways.
Oh, fantastic. I just had someone coming in, I was just doing the conversion, that they harvested 15 gallons of honey. And of course I'm like, oh, what's 15 gallons to kilograms? You probably know, do you, Seeds? Oh God, it's about nearly 60 kilos of honey.
Wow, so that's impressive. So
Yeah.
if you're onto it and you're watching what the bees are doing and you're looking after your bees, you can harvest an enormous amount of honey because you can easily keep tapping it as soon as it's full. And that's a major advantage over conventional Langstroths. I used to batch process, which is the only way you can do it efficiently with conventional Langstroth hives because it's such an ordeal. You got to dedicate your whole weekend or more to harvesting a bunch of hives at once. And what you'll do is you'll take the super boxes off, you'll brush all the bees out or use a leaf blower, you take all of those frames on the back of a pickup to your processing shed, and then you're decapping, you're spinning and so on. And the issue with that is you're often leaving the super boxes full while you're waiting for other hives to catch up. And that's a big loss because a hive that is pumping could have filled a box like this in a few days or a week. So you've lost a whole box of honey while you're waiting for a few other hives to catch up and do your batch processing. Whereas if you're onto it, which it sounds like you are, as soon as you see the honey full, you can keep harvesting it, storing honey in jars on the shelf instead of in boxes on the hive. And that brings about another point, is you don't need tall stacks of hives anymore. You don't need to maintain that equipment. You don't need it sitting around with wax moth and vermin going after it. So there's more that meets the eye when you're comparing conventional Langstroth against the flow hive.
Oh, great, Seeds. I know you're in the brood box, but Dan Man just built the first flow hive and has been watching the YouTube videos, but just wondering, the flow frames he's saying don't seem to come into alignment when he uses the flow frame key the way suggested. So I'm not sure if it's, you know how they're offset as well and people think that's not right as well, but he's saying they're not in alignment.
Okay, well let's just go through that quickly.
Yeah.
I will pull the frame out in a
17
second, just check
things
we've
at
got a laying
once.
queen. I'm pretty sure we do because it looks pretty neat in here. We've got a lot of bees, everything's looking nice. I can see a lot of young bees as well. I better puff my smoker because if you stand around talking too long, it goes out. Give it a few good puffs to get it going again. And these bees are cooperating, but they were a bit twitchy at first, so I'll give them some more smoke. We've also got our little frame rests here, which are made to use with the super lifter, and they go like that, which are a handy trinket to have in your toolbox. And there we go, we're all set up to do a brood inspection, but let's just take a look at the flow frames for a second. The question is, I use the key and it doesn't look like the flow frames are in line, so I will just grab a key now and let's go through that. Now, it should be out of line this way, so you see a stepped pattern. So that's normal. You see a stepped pattern, inset, outset, inset, outset. And that's because we want the moving part, which is the one that's inset, to move deeper beneath the comb once they've built it out. That way you get less disturbance on the surface. Now, in order to check alignment, what you need to do is put the key in the top, and when you turn it and you look on what is a 13-degree angle, you should see the hexagon cells. So you're looking at that. So it's about that angle there, and you should see hexagon cells. But note, if you start looking on a different angle like that, it'll look out of line, and that's because we have gaps and there's the inset outset as well. Now, the gaps are there for the bee's knees, so there's a strategic gap left so the parts don't meet, because we don't want any bees getting their legs caught if there happens to be bees down the cells when you're harvesting. Now, I'm going to put the key in just halfway here and turn it, and then you'll see the difference with what should happen. So you're seeing hexagon cells on this side. Now I turn it there, and that's when the magic happens. And now you've got zigzagging cells on this side and hexagon cells over here. So in this configuration, we will be harvesting half of the frame. And let us know if what we're doing, and we're putting the key in the bottom slot in order to actuate it there, to open it, and the top slot to close it. Let us know if something isn't right. Jump on and contact us at customer support, and we will help you troubleshoot that. But if your frame is doing what we're showing here, then everything is correct. And before you put it in the hive, the key goes in the top slot, you turn it to a 90, and that makes sure all of the cells are pushed down. Now, they don't have to be perfect in line. The bees will use what they are given. In fact, I've got a very slight overshoot on purpose. So there will be the slightest bit of out of line you should see if you go along when the cells are in closed position. And that's because later on, when everything's waxy, that will help the final alignment. Good questions, keep them coming in. We're in our brood box today. We are showing you the super lifter, and we are going to now pull out a frame by using our smoker to clear some bees away, and choosing a frame to pull out. We're always just having a look and making sure there's not frames joined to the next frame on the first one we pull. After that, you can go sideways, and that makes it easier. We can get a little bit of sideways wiggle, which is important to bring that first frame out, because what you're doing is you're breaking the propolis connecting the end bars together. Now, the bees aren't particularly happy. They're giving me warning stings. I could put my gloves on now, or I could get my smoker going and give them a bit more smoke. There we go. So if you find they're going for your hands and you're going gloveless, then put your gloves on, or if you don't mind a sting, you can keep going without them. But each hive is different in terms of how protective they are. Giving them some smoke and waiting a few minutes is the recipe to getting them as calm as you can. So the first frame, you're slowly bringing that up because you don't want to roll the bees. if the queen was there, you could actually squash her if you went too fast on that first frame. Now, what are we seeing here? We're seeing a beautiful patch of brood here. We've got a drone bee there, a fresh one that's taking its first steps. You can see why it's hairy, and it's taking its first steps in the hive, and that's the male bees, and all the rest here are the worker bees. We've got pollen stores over here. This is a naturally drawn comb. All we've given them is the wooden frame, the comb guide at the top, and they've done the rest. So you've got pollen stores here, they're bee bred. Give us a thumbs up if you can see the colours down the cells, the yellows and oranges. That's them collecting the pollen from the flowers, putting it into the cells, adding their enzymes, topping it with a bit of honey, letting it ferment, and that's their bee bread, the primary food for the young developing worker bee. Okay. The other side's looking similar with a whole lot of brood here. Got a couple of drones, mostly worker bees, and a beautiful show of pollen here. Can you see that? Give us a thumbs up.
Looking amazing on the camera.
Beautiful. So that's a lovely thing straight away. I'm pretty happy with how this hive is. You've got a few drone cells here. This is freeform comb the bees have made inside the wooden frame. So naturally drawn comb, and you can see they've decided to put some drones over here, worker bees over here, pollen there. They've sized the cells just how they like, which some people say has a health benefit. For me, it's just I can't be bothered putting the foundation and wax in. I prefer not to put in wax from other hives. So I like to go naturally drawn. But you can suit yourself. You can put wax and wires or plastic foundation in these frames that come with our Flow Hive kit. Or you can do what we do and just let the bees draw the honey comb themselves, just as they've always done. Let's pull out another frame or two while we answer a few more questions.
Yes, it's just on that flow frame, and I think we get asked this a bit by sort of fairly new beekeepers, just wondering, so if you're turning that key in the flow frame, why aren't you breaking up larvae and all of that stuff that's in the brood box?
Okay, that's a good question. Now, the main reason is the queen isn't laying eggs up at the top here. So what you've got here is the queen excluder, and that's a grid which is 5.3 millimeters diameter across each of these gaps. And what that means is the gaps are too small for a laying queen to get through. And the drones can't actually get through either, so what you'll have in the top is just the worker bees storing honey. That way you don't have brood in your flow frames. And if everything's functioning correctly, you can get the occasional scenario. Next time I find that, I'll be able to give you an example where the queen sneaks through here when she's perhaps just small and a new queen, and then you could get the queen laying in your flow frames, in which case you can simply move the queen, or if you can't find her, all the bees down into the bottom, exclude her back in place, the problem goes away. But for the most part, the queen excluder means the queen will be down here laying. You'll never get them in the flow frames. You never get the eggs laid and therefore larvae. Now, look at this frame. This is a beautiful show of a queen laying lots of eggs in all the cells. Thousands of cells there with bees that are just about to emerge. They're going through their metamorphosis. They're about to chew their way out into the hive. Now here's one that's just chewed its way out in the last hour. You can see that it's just emerging, a fluffy little baby light coloured bee covered in fur, taking its first wobbly steps. It's a beautiful thing. And it will soon start doing its chores in the hive, which one of the first jobs is cleaning out the cells that the bees are emerging from. And at the end they'll put a little pheromone door hanger on that says it's ready for the queen to lay another egg. But that's a beautiful example of a nice laying queen. When you're seeing brood wall to wall across the frames, she is a keeper.
Cedar, Mrs. Madeline would like to know how much room or space from your house and your outdoor seating area could you put a hive?
Okay, the answer is it depends, like a lot of things in beekeeping, but the main thing it depends on is the traits of your colony. Now, I've had hives very close to my front door for many, many years, and I just make sure I choose a nice, friendly one because you don't want a territorial hive right by your door. Now, if you are purchasing bees off a bee breeder, the chances are they're breeding for nice, calm genetics, and especially if you ask for a nice, calm hive, that's the kind of hive that you want if you are choosing to put one very close to where you reside. A lot of people do keep bees in close quarters in their backyard or even on their balcony in a high-rise building, so it definitely can be done. Now, if you do find a colony that has more territorial aggressive traits, then that's when you need to introduce new genetics in the hive by taking the old queen away and putting in a new one with nice friendly characteristics, and the whole hive 3 or 4 weeks later will change into a nice calm one that you can really be around. The other one is where you point the entrance. I'm standing right in front of it. The bees are patiently waiting behind me. They're not getting aggressive at me, but some hives won't like you standing right in front, so you're situating your hive so that the entrance points in a direction that's clear from a walking pathway where humans are frequently trafficking, because you don't want the situation where your guests are walking in front of the hive and accidental stings in their hair because the flight path is right here. So that's one of the first considerations of situating a hive, is where the entrance points, and that can really make a difference. If you can have one like we have up here right on the balcony, and we've just pointed the entrance through the railing, and that way you can freely use that balcony area without bothering the bees. Okay, isn't that a beautiful example of naturally drawn comb and a whole lot of worker brood?
Fantastic. So you're doing a brood inspection, or you're just having a little look inside there at the moment for the live that we're doing, but we've got someone who's in Adelaide and wondering how often should they be performing health inspections on their flow hive? Okay,
good question. Now, the game's changed a little bit here with the arrival of Varroa. The first year of Varroa, which I believe you don't have in Adelaide yet. The first year will be more demanding, where you really want to be on the ball, give your bees an extra hand to get through their build-up phase, it's called. And after that, you can do selective breeding for ones that handle Varroa by themselves. But in that first year, you just keep your bees alive by looking after them however you can and doing lots of brood inspections, checking for Varroa, putting in treatments, which is easier with the flow hive as well because we can utilise the tray down below, and lessening the Varroa, making sure they're queen right, and that way you can get your hive through to that build-up phase. So that's the demanding phase, if you like. We're just about out the other side now, but even so, we join the rest of the world in a bit more management than before. We used to be able to just go through the brood nest a couple of times a year, or when needed, when you saw the numbers dropping. Now, we still want to be in there. Now that we're through the build-up phase, every 6 weeks or so, checking for Varroa numbers, making sure we're keeping them low so the hive can stay happy and healthy. But unlike other things, like if you've got chickens, you've got to be there to close them up at night, make sure the foxes and the snakes and goannas aren't getting them and so on. Whereas bees, you can go away for a month or two and your bees are fine. So they're a good, I guess, agricultural or animal to keep, because they, for the most part, you're not really keeping them. They're deciding to stay and they're coming and going. We're just giving them a helping hand to make sure they stay nice and productive. And if you're doing that, then you can get amazing amounts of honey, and that's just one of the many benefits of beekeeping. So chime in, let us know how often you need to look after your brood nest with your hive in your area. It's often good to ask the locals.
Yeah. So do the hives ever fight within each other? Like obviously you can see on our apiary, they're not too close, but they're right next to each other. Do the bees ever fight with each other?
Yes, they can. Generally no, but if the bees are in a robbing mood, let's say you've left honey frames out, which you shouldn't do, and they've gotten a taste for collecting honey instead of flower nectar, they might decide that, well, it's just easier to go and steal all the honey from that weak hive over there, and they'll get in, they'll steal all the honey, rob all the resources, and yes, fight. But for the most part, they don't. They just stick to their hive, or if they do drift because there's a prevailing wind or whatever to another hive, then if they're coming in loaded with nectar or pollen, then the hive will just let them in freely. If they come empty-handed, well, it's a fight at the entrance. So there is some fighting, but generally not. Okay, we've got a lot of drones on this one, which is interesting. Typically in springtime you get a lot of drones. Now have a look at this waggle. This bee is going off, waggling like crazy. Now it's percussing on the comb, it's trying to tell the bees something. There's another one here, and that's their dance that actually they can convey an incredible amount of information to the other bees. Not only which way to fly, but and how far. They can also tell exactly where to go, in my experience, within a metre. And if I cover up that little spot they're collecting water, they'll fly there and they'll hover over the bit I've covered up, and they won't go to the big pool I've got beside it. They will wait for another instruction from the hive. So that says to me, they're not only saying distance and direction like all the bee books say, they're telling an amazing story of exactly where to go by communicating like this with their dancers. There's a lot of communicating going on. Look at that waggle. That is very cool. We've got quite a lot in our bee book about their communication. Flow Hive's Book of Bees and Beekeeping. It's a new thing we've recently put out with a wealth of knowledge to help you get started in beekeeping, and a wealth of knowledge if you're already an experienced beekeeper. So that's a beautiful thing. Now I'm seeing young larvae down the cells, as well as a lot of brood. So I'm happy. We have a laying queen. I didn't see her, but I didn't go through all the hive, but we're running out of time here. So I'm going to put this hive back together and just show you how easy it is with the super lifter to put this box back on and in place. Using the smoker, we can smoke the bees out of in between the frames. That's always good because you might squash bees otherwise when you put the frames back. So smoke's great for calming bees, also moving them out of the way. It's a very good tool for the beekeeper. And what we try and do is put them back in the same order, or if we can't, because we're moving things around on purpose or we've forgotten, then what we have a look for is making sure we're not pressing comb against comb. If you've got lots of hive beetles in your area like we have, when you squash two frames together without the bees able to service that area, that's when the beetles take hold and lay thousands of eggs, and you've got the start of what could be a slime out and the end of your hive. So what you want to do is make sure there's not any bulgy bits touching other frames. And one easy way is you put them back in the same order, or just look down between the frames as you close them up. Using the smoke again between the end bars just to move the bees away, and you can then squash the frames up. You really want to tightly pack them because bee space is important to the bees, and that's the distance between comb surfaces, and it's the distance between each comb center as well. If you have big gaps, bees will fill it with comb, and that becomes a place or an area you'll need to clean up and get them back in line. You want them building the wax in the frame like this. These are all naturally drawn comb in all of our hives here, and we find that very useful. We don't need to put the wax and wire foundation in because we're not putting these frames in a centrifuge. You can if you want to though, in terms of putting wax and wire in. conventional beekeepers will almost always recommend that because that's what they do. And that's what I used to do, but I was very happy when I realised I didn't need to do it anymore because we now harvest our honey in a different way with our flow hive. Now let's go and have a look at the jar of honey that's harvesting itself while we're doing some beekeeping. And today we were just showing you the super lifter and how it works on this hive here. The little frame rest can come off. And now we're going to close the hive up again. Now the closure of the hive, people are really appreciating. The only spot we need to worry about when it first touches down is this top edge touching here. So what we'll do is roll that down, and you're grabbing the handle, not the roof at this point, because you need to take the weight, and as it comes down, it's going to touch down on the box there, like that. And you can take a moment to line that up if you need to, and that way it's all nicely in line for you then to do the next bit. And you can take as long as you need to in order to clear the bees out of the way. So we're collapsing that pole leg, rolling it around. Now if I just drop that now, the hive will close. You can have a look for any bees that might be in the gut. You can use some smoke, and you can slowly roll that hive closed, which is just so much more gentle than waddling up with a heavy box of honey like we've all done as conventional beekeepers. There's nothing much you can really do apart from just drop it on a pile of bees and walk away. In fact, often you drop it on a pile of bees and then you've got to wrestle it into line, whereas this is a nice, gentle, easy way to really open the box and close it again. So people are writing in with a lot of feedback and really enjoying that point, not only the easy opening but the closure as well. Packs up like that, goes back in the bag. There's also these handles which are really useful. They make it even easier. They go into the hive there and allow you to lift with a bit more leverage. So if you want to make it even easier, or you're doing a double box full of honey, then use those handles. Thank you so much for all of your great questions. Let's go and finish the harvesting process over here. And look at that, we've got a nice jar of honey. A little tip here is you put the key back to a 90, you put it in the top slot like that, all the way to the back, make sure it goes in all the way, turn it to a 90. And what's that doing is it's putting all of the frame parts back into the cell form position. So they've gone from that to that. So a little tip is leave it there for a minute or two while you pack up this little tube here, and that means all of your frame parts will come back into line, and you'll limit the problem that can occur. Whereas if they're really out of line, the bees are really making big blobs of wax in these areas to make wobbly cells work, which they will do, that could limit the flow path of honey next time. So to keep the flow path nice, we leave that for a minute or two, and then we can pack it all away. I'm just looking for my little cap, which I've put in my caddy box, and all I need to do is a little quick swap there, and I did not spill a drop of honey. Actually, I lied, I spilled one there. Big mess to clean up. Comparing that to conventional, where you've got a whole shed of messy stuff, I hate cleaning up, so it would stay there for weeks, get even worse, covered in ants, covered in wax moth, covered in all sorts of things. Now it's all confined to a good jar of honey, and that's the only thing you need to wash. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. Let us know what you'd like us to cover, and hopefully we can get all of your questions answered. And a huge thank you to all of you that are chiming in and helping answer all the questions from all around the world. And it's fascinating to us to really know where you are and what's going on, so chime in, let us know. Thanks for watching, same time next week, see you then.